It's that time again. If you're a real estate agent and you're looking to finally build a business that creates consistent cash flow, but you're concerned about all the market disruptions, relax. You found your safe haven to learn the secret to success. List you last. Welcome to this week's podcast. Hey, welcome, fellow listing agents. Bob Mangold, the listing coach, here with episode 24 of the If You List You Last podcast. Now, this week, we're going to get an update from Robert. We lovingly call him the traveling listing agent, to see how his first 3 months or his last 3 months have gone taking listing while he's been on the road, right? He's been traveling across the country through the lower half of the country. And, well, we're going to talk to him and see how that's gone for him and how he's been handling the open houses where he's getting, on average, 125 to 200 people attending. And then how he's been able to maintain his prospecting time, listing appointments, and what have his results been. Plus, he'll share some insights and thoughts on working with the low-hanging fruit and what he's doing to take the listings. Now, as always, make sure you join our Real Estate Asset Advisors Facebook group so you can join the conversation, share your thoughts, comments, questions on any of the topics I discuss right here. Heck, you could even go and ask Robert questions in there, right? So if you also have a topic or a conversation you want me to review, hey, let me know and I'll go over it in the Facebook group and just let me know, right? All right, so let's get into this week's mortgage market update because it was really ugly last week for mortgage interest rate. So I hope your buyers have locked their loans or they're going to get hit with some pretty serious rate increases. So one of the reasons we encourage you to join the Facebook group is I posted in there a couple times last week when to lock your loans so that your buyers wouldn't get hit with that. Unfortunately, inflation is still rising at a pretty substantial clip. And in the Fed minutes, they even addressed raising the Fed funds rate. Now, that doesn't have anything to do technically with mortgage interest rates, but in those notes, they also talked about what's called the runoff, how they're letting mortgage-backed securities that they've purchased run off of their books, meaning they're not buying anymore. When there's low demand for mortgage-backed securities, they would raise interest rates to make them more attractive. And that's what happens to interest rates on your loans. Technically, the Fed funds rate doesn't impact, but there's plenty of things the Fed does do that impacts the rate that your people pay. I thought what I would do, with all this doom and gloom being reported, I thought I'd do a little bit of research because I've grown up in an era where rates were at 20% at one point. And back in the early 2000s, when you had this really hot real estate market, I wanted to go back and look at what were rates like then. And so what I did is, as the media's out there reporting all this high interest rate dilemma, the reality is that interest rates right now are actually a little bit lower than the normal range for the last 60 years. So instead of quoting Jerome Powell, and he had a saying, the rates are going to be higher for longer, what we really need to be saying is rates will be normal for longer. So here's what I found. I went back to 2004 and I looked at the average yield on a 10-year treasury in 2004, 20 years ago. The rate was 4.27%. From January 1st through April 9th of 2024, the 10-year average is 4.36, virtually identical to 2004. Why did I use the 2004 as the baseline? It's pretty simple. Back in 2004, for those of you who have been in the business, it was a hot real estate market. And nobody was complaining about interest rates. It wasn't even a conversation. It wasn't thought of. Buyers weren't saying, I'll wait until rates come down. Everything was normal, just like it is now. However, there is one big difference. Median income since 2004 has risen 34.36%, while housing prices have risen by 78.78%. So make no mistake, affordability is an issue. But there is some good news in the data, depending on how you look at it. If you're a homeowner, your equity is outpacing your pay increases. So despite the fact that it's going up almost twice as much, actually it's a little bit over twice as much as your median income, what that's doing for the American homeowner is building massive wealth for them. So the idea of waiting for people to buy is crazy when you evaluate the data that way. Now, again, make no mistake, affordability is an issue. But our job as real estate practitioners is to educate the public and help them understand the fastest and only way for the average person in the US to build personal wealth is through owning a home. And it's imperative that we teach them this because the media sure as hell won't. Now, does that mean it's easier to get into? No, it doesn't. It means younger kids may buy a 4-bedroom house and rent out 2 of the bedrooms to their friends for a couple of years till the income keeps up with it and it becomes affordable for them. They might have to do different things. But our job as a real estate agent is to teach the public why this is so critical and to also teach them about interest rates, that they're just normal. They're not high, they're normal. Listen, folks, if you make decent amount of money in the United States, decent amount defined as, say, $100,000, those higher interest rates are substantially offset by the income taxes that you save on the mortgage interest deduction. It's our job to teach people how this system really works. And that's why my real estate group teaches classes on how to use a government rebate to pay a home off in 10 years or less. We're proactively educating the consumer how to tap into wealth building systems using real estate. Now, one of the goals of this podcast is to help agents focus on the consumer and how to help them be a force for change in their financial future. After all, we're the number one asset that millionaires have used to become wealthy. It's real estate. That's our business. So it's our job to help educate people. It's one of the reasons I'm doing this podcast is to try and get that word out to the real estate community, to get it out into the community. So with that, let's move on to our guest. Robert, are you all set? You ready? All right, let's go. All right, so now I'm excited. About 3 months ago, one of the podcasts, I don't remember which episode number, we had Robert, we gave him the nickname, the Nomad Listing Agent, come on, as he was about to embark on 3-month road trip and still continued to do business in his market, which is Southern California, while he was halfway across the country. And so I thought it would be cool to give you an update, see what he's learned, and hear directly from him. But I thought what I'd do first, Robert, is tell you some of the responses I've gotten from people as I told them, like what you're doing, right? Other real estate agents, and the responses that we've gotten, and then let you bring people back to reality. So the first one is, with much disdain, people have said, I would never do that. My answer was, nobody told you to do it that way, but that happened to be what he chooses to do. The question is, do you have a process that frees you from being a geographic prisoner to your market, other than what you're telling yourself that you would never do that? So what's that feel like, not to be a geographic prisoner, saying, hey, I have to be in the market to take a listing?
You know what? I've been in the business just a little over 38 years. And for up until March of 2019, when I met you, I thought that you had to be geographically handcuffed to your market. And I was teaching, don't go outside your market because you're not the area expert. So I bought into it as well. And then when I was introduced to this platform, but more importantly, when I was introduced to COVID in March of 2020, we couldn't show homes. We couldn't do open houses. We had to think outside the box. We entered the Zoom era, if you will. And I started taking all my listings via Zoom. Sellers appreciated it. It was shortened to the point. And time effectiveness was amazing. I wasn't spending an hour in traffic to spend another hour with idle chit chat about their home and then another hour back to the office. I would lose 3 hours just with one appointment. And I found that with Zoom, I was taking 3 to 5 minute listings, at least appointments, vetting out that seller, finding out their motivation. I was pre-approving that seller. Is that a seller that I would like to work with? Do they qualify to work with me? And I'm not trying to be cocky. I just want to be very clear on the target audience I'm going after. And I found that I started doing all my Zoom calls via listing appointments via Zoom. And it was just a systematic process. I've always been into systems, whether it be the REO business of the last couple times. There's a systematic way of doing things, and taking a lot of listings is one of them. So we need to make sure that those systems are in place. So taking a Zoom call, I could do 3, 4, 5, 6 listings in a day, all via Zoom and very efficiently. So when we set out in the RV, our kids are of the age where they really don't need us a whole lot. They've got their own thing going on. And my wife and I, Carla, 34 years in August, and this is our window. Let's take this model that we're doing, the system that we're using of taking all our listings via Zoom, having our buyer agents run the open houses. Because at the end of the day, who's the one coming to the open house? Buyers. So the seller deserves buyer specialist go home. So we've decided, we took the show, headed out. Our first leg, it was a 3-month tour all through California, through Arizona, New Mexico, then through Texas. Encountered a little weather, but I'm glad, because by the time we were getting ready to head back home to San Diego, that was our 3-month tour. We'll sit in San Diego for a little bit, then head up our next leg. But yeah, my business has not changed, Bob, at all.
And so, folks, whether you want to travel in an RV or whatever, Robert and I, before we started recording, we're laughing about the picture many of you may have seen of him sitting on the beach in Cabo. And we were just talking about what a cool time that was. We had a lot of fun and whatever. And somebody said to me, "Where's Robert?" And I was like, he's down at the beach taking a couple listings. Right. And we're at a conference of real estate agents, and they're like, "What?" So yeah, no, this was like Tuesday, and Monday he had already taken 2 listings. And I said, yesterday he took 2, so he's taking another 2 today. And so he's just down there doing it. And they were like, BS. I was like, come on, let's go down and watch. Just be quiet. And that's when we shot that picture of you on the beach with the Corona on your little table and 4 listings. And so what happened, folks, is COVID actually was the trainer of the seller, right? You couldn't go in California. They didn't let you go in on a listing presentation. So it had to be done on Zoom. So for everybody, I agree with you. Before COVID, I think it would be hard to convince people to do it. But because so many people got accustomed to Zoom, it became pretty simple to do, because, well, they found out, hey, this is cool. I don't have to clean the house. I don't have to do anything. And they could just talk and walk through that process. We were at a different class today, and I told people, hey, if you still want to go to somebody's house to take a listing, you can do that. I'm not saying it's bad, but I'm just saying it's more efficient. And one of the things I try and teach everybody is start to think outside the box, think bigger. What could my life be like if? So if you weren't geographically a prisoner to where you're at, what would you do with the time? It doesn't mean you don't work. And I have to believe, Robert, that because you pick up and move, every 3-4 days, something like that.
Usually our goal is to stay a week in one spot, but yeah, I would say that's the average.
And so then you got to pick up and do that. And then you had things where, whatever, some fuses blew and some stuff like that. And it was snowing and whatever. So all that, that's easy distraction to get in the way of your time blocking and your prospecting time. Like, how did you deal with that?
You know what? At the end of the day, I time block every single minute from the time I get up until the time we go to bed. Everything in between, I time block. My prospecting, my trainings, my appointments, everything is on a time block. And if we're having a travel day, I just time block usually from 10 to 4 on my calendar. And that's the travel time. I know that once we get to the new spot, I'll be up and running. The Starlink will be out. The slides will be out. But bottom line, time blocking.
Yeah, that was another question you just brought up. It was like, how does he do Zoom meetings when he's traveling? And if depending on where he's staying, how does he have internet?
Yeah.
Starlink.
We went to the desert with the family, sidebar here, went to the desert with a family, the whole family, teen motorhomes like ours, 47 devices, all getting Wi-Fi through our Starlink. So it works awesome.
So remember this, guys, when Russia invaded Ukraine and they took down their internet and their telephone services and everything, Elon Musk shipped all those things over there free of charge. And that's how Ukraine's been able to take and exist as a society in war when Russia took out their infrastructure on Starlink. Because it's funny, my son is going to take and do the same basic thing starting June 2nd. And he runs our digital advertising agency. So obviously internet's important to him. And he's just getting Starlink to do it.
That works so good.
And he's going all over the country for 2 months. Like he's going to the West Coast, everywhere. You don't have to be a prisoner to the internet either, folks, because Starlink is out there. Because, and does anybody think any different? Like they don't really see when you're doing that because you got such a nice place. Like they're not looking at it going, oh my God, this guy's in a tent and I'm going to have him list my house.
Yeah.
You're not getting any of that, are you?
Yeah, it's definitely not a tent. And I've never actually, I'll be on call and they'll maybe hear of our story, how we're traveling all over. My wife does a blog on it. And so I have sellers actually talk to me about it and they're like, oh man, I want to do that. So it's quite the contrary. I've never had anyone give me any amount of lip for doing this.
It just makes a great story, right?
Yeah.
Let's be honest, folks, stories sell. And then because you're doing a blog and stuff, well, these people can follow you and they become part of the journey. So some people who maybe want to do it, but they are a geographic prisoner because they have this thing called the JOB. They can't get up and do that, so they can live vicariously through you guys.
Yeah. It's, you know what, Bob, I'll tell you, it's been a game changer. It's been a life changer. Carl and I have had so much fun with our dog Bodie and just seeing all the different sites. We have a standing joke where every morning when we wake up, and if we're in a different place, we get a different view just about every week. And it is spectacular. We're having so much fun.
Yeah. It's not without headaches, right? So let's give them that. Guys, there's always going to be headaches, right?
And just to let you know, when we first started this call, I've never in the whole 3 months we've been out on the road have had anyone come knock on my door. As soon as you and I started talking, somebody knocked on the door and I still don't know what they wanted and hope everything's okay. But things come up. What's that? Oh, our hose broke. So the neighbor came and said, hey, you're flooding my area. The hose broke. I've had one time where we're on, Carta was making breakfast while we're just chatting, recording some stuff, and the fire alarm goes off. So it's just like real life, only different.
And I think one of the cool parts about doing it on Zoom and what Zoom's brought to the table, folks, is that it's okay for that stuff to happen. I'll be doing meetings and somebody's dog barks and they're like, oh, I'm sorry about my dog. No, dude, that's the beauty of working at home, that your dog can bark and that you're there. And nobody cares about any of that stuff anymore.
They certainly don't, because we're getting to the root of the issue. Sellers, absolutely every single seller I've ever met in my entire life, and I think this will continue, they want just a few things. They want the highest and best price, the shortest amount of time, least amount of liability, hassle, and expense. I've yet to ever meet a seller who said, Robert, if you can get the least amount of money for my home, that'd be great. And if while you're at it, can you charge me as much as possible? That's never happened. So we just got to find out exactly what they're looking for and deliver that.
And for those of you going, wait a minute, dude, how do you determine the value of the property? So that's a big one that I hear a lot too. So you have to go through and walk through and see what it's like to figure out what the value is. Mm-hmm. And my answer is, no, I don't. The only one who's going to determine value is going to be the buyers. So the truth is, guys, I've done listing presentations and people take their computers around and go, here's the bedroom and here's this. And I can tell if it's a hoarder house or not. And so at the end of the day, that we're convinced that we have to do these things in a certain way. And the seller's completely cool with it. And because of how we do pricing, we start marketing the listing at a price below what we want to sell it for. So we don't need to educate on pricing, and we'll let the market determine the price. And in 99% of the cases, the market's delivering more money than the seller wants. One of our agents in Las Vegas yesterday, seller wanted $475,000 for the house, ended up getting $503,000. Oh, all cash too. So at the end of the day, you don't have to go there to determine price. You're going in there thinking that you have to do the CMA and do a listing presentation the old fashioned way. And what I would tell you is that, on average, Robert, how long are you on the phone with somebody on Zoom?
My appointments last anywhere between 3 and 5 minutes. And I'm not trying to be funny, but I get right to the question. Tell me about your value. How you think, how'd you come to that price? If we can't address that elephant in the room, then I decide to either work with them or not work with them at that point. And I kindly don't even continue my call. Because if somebody's digging their heels in on $1 million and it's worth 800, that's the only conversation I need to be having. Nothing else matters.
Right.
We can't come to terms, at least reality, then the call's over. Most Zoom calls take 20 minutes. And I find the ones that go super easy are the longest because they keep asking great questions. And the more questions these sellers can ask, the better. So I schedule 30-minute calls and very few of them go over 30 minutes.
Right. So just know, folks, it's a two-step process. So when he says my presentation is 3 minutes, that's the initial phone call to determine how realistic is this person. So I had somebody ask me a couple of days ago, hey, what percentage of those FSBO and expired calls do you actually get? And I said, we take more than 90% of the listings for the motivated seller. And they, well, what does that mean? And it means exactly what Robert just said. If you're not going to take an offer of anything less than $1 million and your house is worth 800,000, I'm not going to waste my time and effort. I don't. And that's one of the things that I tell people, listen, I'm not here to talk to you about listing your property. I have no interest in listing it. I only have an interest in selling it. You want it sold. I don't get paid if it doesn't get sold. Listing does nothing for either one of us. So let's get real about what it's going to take to sell this and get a price that's reasonable. If they're not reasonable at that point, why waste your time and effort? And so think about it again. If you were in your market and you have to drive in Southern California traffic, and that thing was like, call it 15 miles away, 10 miles away, that's an hour drive for you. And you go over there simply to find out that they're completely unrealistic in what they want. You just blew 2.5 hours driving back and forth and 30 minutes of talking to them. And you just wasted that time, where now you can just say, you know what, doesn't look like we're going to be a good fit to do this, and move on to the next. Yeah. And I think that's the part people forget about, right?
Yeah, I've actually, and I'm not trying to say this to brag, but I'm saying this because I have as much confidence as I think one can have. When I meet with a seller and they're not realistic, I'm okay walking away from that, because I know what kind of grief it's going to give me. It's the way I sell homes is a certain way. Now I'm flexible and I understand I have a range, but I don't deal with unrealistic, unmotivated sellers. That is absolutely not happening, because I've done it before and I don't like that part of real estate. I like real estate with people that want to sell their home, that are great to work with. I want to create that environment, and I don't want to work with nightmares.
Yeah. And the nightmare is never going to refer you anybody either. Or if they do, it's another nightmare like themselves.
Yeah. We don't want that.
And so I've never understood why, and there's like pretty much every guru on the planet teaches, just take the listing at whatever price and then just start preconditioning them to lower the price. I just think that's the dumbest thing ever.
Yeah, I don't like that strategy.
And then 6 months later, when your thing expires and every neighbor's driven by it for 6 months saying, oh, that agent didn't do crap. And then 2 weeks later, the new agent who got the right price anyway sells it. And they go, oh, that other agent must have been crap. This new one's the new badass in the neighborhood. So I never thought that was logical to do. No. And here's the good news, folks. We get to pick who we work with. If the seller has the right to say no, don't you? Yeah. So why work with people that are going to give you an ulcer? And so we just recommend don't do that. I mean, you can do whatever you want, but we don't recommend doing it that way.
I think the biggest thing, Bob, is that we got to realize what the lowest hanging fruit is, in my opinion. The lowest hanging fruit on the seller tree, we've talked about this multiple times, FSBOs. They have their hands up. They're telling everybody, hey, I want to sell my home. And because they're not licensed, they don't do this every day. This is not what they do for a living. They don't understand that the tools that are available to them to make them get the highest and best price. It's a hope and a prayer because their friend at a barbecue did it. I think expireds, they already showed that they were committed to the process for 6 months. 99% of the expireds I talked to, it's because the agent didn't price it properly. No, the agent didn't explain to the seller, you're listing it too high. They need to have that conversation. So I find FSBOs and expireds are the best with our platform. It's amazing.
Think about it. Your house is up for sale. Most of them, 95% of them, are willing to pay at least 2%, but most times 3% anyway. And because of the Home Boss system, we could just go, hey, Robert, based on our platform, I could do all the marketing, advertising, create the competition amongst buyers in your house for the same thing you're willing to pay me. And I can do the work, make sure you don't get in trouble, eliminate all your liability. What if we just did it that way? Right? Because
perfect.
If you're willing to pay 3%, I don't have to argue with you. My fee is 3%. If you don't know what the Home Boss process is, go to, I think, like episode 2 or 3 of the podcast. I walk through what that looks like. And at the end of the day, by being upfront and honest with people, you're going to get transactions that sell. And you're going to not waste time, which is the one commodity that we can have, right? And then imagine now Robert's out parked by this beautiful lake, like that place in Dallas. That place was gorgeous.
That was awesome.
And then he's dealing with all these obnoxious people that can have the ability to ruin your day. Why do that?
Oh, no way.
Why do that? Let's work with the ones who are realistic and treat you well and things like that. There's plenty of business. There's plenty of business out there to go out and get.
I talked to an agent yesterday, and he was asking me a little bit about the platform, a little bit how I do my business, and I was explaining it to him. And I tell him the clients that I don't want to work with, and we role played and we went over some things. I said, I don't want to work with these people, but I need listings. I'm willing to do that. I'm like, you just can't be attached to the outcome. You got to remember that you don't want to work with somebody that's not realistic and motivated. Don't just take a listing to take a listing. That's a terrible marketing strategy. So it's so many of us, it's hard to let somebody go away that could potentially be a transaction. That's a difficult thing, but you need to set your standards and live within that and have some flexibility, but not stick to your standards.
And the key was when they say to you, hey, but I need the listing. No, you don't need a listing. You need a closing. There's a difference. And if you're going to take this listing and it's not going to close and it's going to do nothing but create grief and havoc in your life, now it detracts you from going out and getting a listing that you could sell. That's a bad thing, but that is a hard thing to convince an agent of, isn't it?
Oh, it is. I found it to be one of the hardest things to do.
Yeah. And it's not that we don't get it, folks. We do. But one of the things Robert's got 38. I've got 33 years in this. After all those years between us, dude, we got 71 years of doing this.
We're definitely in the,
almost as old category. As me. So at the end of the day, though, folks, over the years, we've been able to see that. So if you're relatively new in the business, you might not have the experience to do it, or, hey, I get it. Gosh, I need a closing to do this, but don't take something that's not going to close and they're going to create grief and havoc in your life. That's the best advice we can give you, is just don't do it.
That's why the lowest hanging fruit is so important.
And they're there. So what's your daily, forget the days you travel. What's that look like for you guys? You're in a market. I know you time block your stuff. What do you do the rest of the time?
When my number one goal is I focus on my mornings. We have our morning routine, our coffee, our exercise, our affirmations. We get fired up. We do our trainings in the morning. And if we travel, we leave no later than 10, get no earlier than 4, or no later than 4. And then I set my appointments in the afternoon. When we're not traveling like today, I'll do podcasts. I'll do, like I said, I took a listing appointment right before this call. I've got another listing appointment I'm waiting to confirm for tonight. So I time block, and I have open calendars for either agents that want to know exactly how we're doing this, or sellers that want to get the highest and best price. That's truly all I'm really meeting with. And you just got to put it on the calendar.
But you are getting some time to go out and do a little bit of sightseeing and stuff like that, right?
What is interesting is we are definitely getting some sightseeing, and any camp we go into, or any RV resort, these aren't like park along the side of the road. Yeah. These are pretty nice events. Actually, Michelle came by and spent some time with us here, and we get our exercise, we get out. We certainly want to go see the highlights of each area, because they balance that stuff out. And it's been cool. It's been really good.
Because otherwise you're just working in a traveling tube then.
Yeah.
Right.
No, we get out. Yeah. We definitely
the views and stuff as you're driving is also pretty nice usually, right? Like Mexico, beautiful state.
When you're up that high looking down, it's a totally different perspective. The vantage point is so different from being in a car.
Right.
Being up high like that, Carla's always videotaping, and we're having a blast.
Yep. Oh, cool.
Yeah.
And yet not impacting your business. So how have the open houses been going with the people working your open houses?
We had an open house last weekend in Fallbrook. This is a rural part of San Diego, upper northern San Diego. You would think Fallbrook, you'd think, oh, nobody wants to live there automatically. It's obviously a great place, but most people think Fallbrook is being way out there. It was pouring rain. We had 3 buyer agents on Saturday, 3 buyer agents on Sunday, but all knew how to do this. We had 125 groups in the pouring rain. It was torrential hurricane weather, and we had 125 groups to the doors.
And so let's clarify that too. When we say groups, folks, for those listening, if mom and dad and 2 kids come in, that's one one buyer. So we think of it as buyer unit. Not some people go, oh, you had a 1,224 person open house. You had to count every person that came through individually, even if it was a family of 10. No, we count that as one.
Yeah.
So if you have 123 individual buying units coming through an open house, is it reasonable to think that our open house agents, if we have 3 of them working, then a minimum they get 3 extra deals out of this?
We had a couple of agents actually, because only one person gets the home.
Right.
And like you say, you turn one listing into 5 opportunities. That's what we do as well. I have 2 of my agents that I talk to that have buyers that they received from that open house that are already putting in contracts. So that's a great way for a buyer agent to grow their database. I talk to buyers all the time, buyer agents all the time, and they don't have a database. That's the best way to start building it, in my opinion.
Yeah. And your agents are paying you a referral, easy word, a referral fee, override, whatever you want to call it.
Absolutely.
And then the company, from what we pay them, they pay you an override.
Yeah.
So you're traveling around the country, taking listings. You get all that commission when it sells. Your buyer's agents are working the open house, paying you 25% referral fee, and the company is paying you referral fees and overrides on that on top of it.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's awesome.
That's a business model, folks.
Yeah.
That's a business model that should be emulated because, listen, he's able to travel whatever number of hours you're working a day, 3, 4, 5. Let's call it 5 hours a day.
Sure.
How many of you guys would trade place with him working 25 hours a week, taking 2, 3 listings a week, having 100 and some people come to the open houses, pick up buyers, have the agents pay you an override, and then have your company pay you an override on top of that? If you wouldn't want that kind of life, I'm not sure what life you want.
Yeah, we're trying to limit our 5 hours a day to 2 or 3 max. We're doing everything we can to shrink that down.
But just anything else, though, you'll get better and better at it as you move around. So I think it was a Saturday that I was talking to you, and it was snowing in New Mexico, and something broke, whatever it was, whether the switches or something.
And we had some inverter issues.
Right.
So, and yeah, that was interesting.
And so all those things get in the way, folks. So it's not always rainbows and unicorns, but he's diligent about that time blocking and prospecting and everything else that comes with it. It's the adventure. Just like we look back at that picture in Cabo now, we laugh and go, wasn't that cool? Like, we had such a great time. Guess what? A year from now, you'll be going, oh my God, wasn't that cool? Remember how we broke down in the snow and it was so cold? It's like all that stuff. Suddenly a year later, it's a lot more fun than it is at the time.
Yeah, I can see looking back, having a bigger smile than I do. But I tell you, all joking aside, this has been just an amazing experience. We're going back to San Diego we have kids there. We have family there. We're born and raised in San Diego. So we're going to go back for 2 months, get reconnected with our community. And then we're going to take another 3-month run at it up through Washington State, like I mentioned earlier, and down around Idaho, Utah, and hit all Colorado and come that way. So that's our next tour. I can't wait to let everyone know what our stops are.
Yeah. So we'll have you come back in 3-month increments and update. The main thing is, folks, is that it hasn't affected his business at all in any negative way. And his buyer's agents are doing what he's trained them to do. And they're thrilled to do it because they're in front of 120 some people in a weekend so that they can pick up buyers and get a paycheck. And everybody within this system, this process, is thrilled with how it works. In my opinion, that's how real estate should work. So I just thought it was important to give you an update, get a little bit different perspective on how this is going, both the good, the bad, and the ugly of it, and do that. So, Robert, you want to close it out with the famous saying here?
Oh, you know what? I have a lot of famous sayings, but I can tell you this. My favorite one is, it works if you do. I think we got to go after the lowest hanging fruit, the sellers with their hands up. Because like you mentioned, Bob, and I think about this every single day, that one listing turns into 5 opportunities. That is how you leverage your business. I think it's best that you streamline and have a life. Don't just be so focused on chasing people that don't want to be chased. Chase the ones that want to be chased. That's what I look at it.
For me, it's always, if you list, you last.
I didn't want to take
it was okay. I put it on a T for you, but that one worked good. So folks, hopefully that helps. It gives you a little different idea, and maybe just a different perspective of what's possible. I know I hear it all the time. Bob, you're nuts. Like, how do you come up with this stuff? You're just the craziest stuff. And I'm sitting there going, man, look at the life these people are living. I think it's pretty cool, but that's just me.
I can tell you this, Bob, that whoever is listening to this, really pay attention, dive in. There's so much opportunity. And I've told you this multiple times. There's not even copycats doing what you're doing. It's so cutting edge. And I tell you, it's just amazing to be a part of your organization, the family, your wife, your kids, your whole organization has just been a blessing for Carla and I. And we just thank you so much for you. You provide so much, and I'm just so grateful. We are both.
I appreciate it, but it wasn't about that. It's just, but you're right. Those that go out and do it will be the ones that have that success. But at the end of the day, again, I know I have a lot of people tell me I'm crazy. I think this is the most exciting time ever to be in real estate. You're going to see a lot of people that don't want to be professionals leave. That's a good thing. It allows you to pick up market share. If you're a listing agent, you can get market share. If you're a buyer's agent, you can't do that, right? You can't say, no, I don't want to sell a home in Fallbrook or wherever to get market share because I don't want to go there. But if you want to focus on listing in a specific area, you can do that. You can't do that as a buyer's agent. So think big, think differently, get outside the box. This is an exciting time, right? We went through the buyer's presentation that I created the other day. And I'll be honest, as I was creating, it was like, man, I'm excited to get out there and talk to some because I'll get them to pay us. So I think it's an extremely exciting time to be in real estate for those that want to be that professional and provide value to the client. Educate yourselves. I posted something in our Facebook group the other night. It's like the highly paid equals highly trained. You just keep doing what you're always doing, folks. You're going to keep making whatever you make. So with that, we'll talk with you next week. And remember, if you list, you last. Talk to you then.